All righty. So, welcome to today's class. What you don't know will, and just out of curiosity, what's the first word that comes to some of your minds when I don't finish that sentence? What you don't know will what?
Won't hurt you, but it will.
It will hurt you, right? That's why I said will. Anything else come to mind? I thought of mess up your whole day. Make you want to go into another line of business, make you think terrible things about the people who write our rules and regulations, right? Well, we're going to try to make that a whole lot better for everybody today. I will mention that if you got the email I sent out just before we started, about 20 minutes before we started, go find it when we're done, because I attached a bunch of things to it that you will find very, very useful.
Okay.
Real estate is often called the most regulated business in the entire United States. We have all kinds of rules. We have DPOR rules. I looked at the DPOR regulation booklet. I have a PDF copy of it. It is 91 pages long. And did you know that when you got your license, you promised to keep every rule in that book? Did you know that? So that even though nobody's ever read it from cover to cover, I guess, unless you work at DPOR, if you fail to keep one of those rules and you didn't know it was a rule, you get the same penalty as the person who did it on purpose. Isn't that encouraging? And really, that's the way it should be. There's no other way to do it. But we have National Association of Realtors rules, NAR Realtor Code of Ethics and all of that. We have local association rules. We have MLS rules. We have hometown policies that count as rules. And of course, then you have the overriding rules of morals and ethics and all of that stuff. So we have a tremendous amount of rules. And what I'm going to try to go over with you in the next hour are the ones that we come into contact with the most. Not just so that you can learn what the rules are and keep them, although we all want to do that, because none of us like getting in trouble or getting fines. If you like getting in trouble and getting fines, you're probably in the wrong class to begin with. But we also learn a lot about how we interact with our customers and clients, how we interact with each other as real estate professionals, how we interact with some of the other people that are involved in our business, even mortgage reps and people like that. Because the rules are not written just to be rules, they are written for a purpose. They are written primarily to ensure that we conduct our business in the most professional way that mankind can think of, that we have a good ethical relationship with our customers and clients and fulfill our responsibilities to them, and that we cooperate with one another in a business that is also probably among the most competitive businesses in the entire world. And so all these rules and regulations serve a function, and it's a good function. And my experience in 30 years of being involved with MLSs and local associations and such is the reality that the vast majority of real estate professionals really want to do everything by the rules because they really are professionals. So we're going to talk about MLS rules first. Those are the ones you run into the most. And then we're going to talk about some of the advertising rules. We're going to talk about the proper way of handling EMDs, deposit money, someone else's money. I have some information on sign ordinances. You don't think about it too much, but they could affect you. And then I have a wonderful chart for us to look at. We can look at RIR's most recent report of which rules people like to break the most. You know, the most popular rules to get fined for. And that should be interesting because it's none of you guys, but we know who those people are. Am I right? Yeah. So I'm going to start off here by sharing my screen. And I believe we want this one. And I'm hoping that you all, and let me just fix my screen back here again so I can see you all. There we go. You all can see this screen with my mouse waving about wildly. And this is the CVR MLS Rules and Regs tips and reminder sheet that I created for Hometown. I've updated it, and I did send you one today. But we're going to go over it because these are the ones that I get the most questions asked, and these are the ones that you probably come into contact with the most. Ask questions. I love questions. And if we don't touch on something that you were hoping we would touch on, let me know. I'll either know the answer or I will get you the answer. So rule number 1, you cannot loan anyone your Matrix login and password or share your access with anyone, period. And you know why that's on here as the number 1 rule? The reason is because it's got the biggest fine. The fine is $2,500 when you get caught. And the fine does not go to the person who borrowed your password, by the way. It goes to you. So I don't think that one needs any explanations. I doubt you have any questions, but I'll ask. Any questions about that one, Linda?
I do have a question. So I'm sure I should know the answer to this, but I'm asking it because I don't have a 100% answer. So in Matrix, we can go in and assign someone to be able to work on our behalf.
Yes, and that's allowed. You can go into Matrix. Here, I'll show you the screen. I knew somebody was going to ask that question. And up here in the right-hand side, I have been set up to become these people in MLS for different reasons over the years.
Okay.
And so I can go into settings here and go to team settings. This used to be under my Matrix now. They moved it about 2 weeks ago. And under team settings, I can add somebody to my team. And then what that lets me do is become that person. And now I'm in as them. I didn't need their login and password. I wasn't stealing their access. And I am in and doing work as them. Now, you have to be a member, obviously, to do that. And last time I checked, no, they've changed it. It used to be you can only do it within your own office, but that has, that's how it works in Instanet, not here in Matrix. So yeah, that's allowed. What's not allowed is for you to give your login and password to somebody and go in and work as you or do your work or even do their own work. That's why you can't save your login and password in your devices anymore, and you have to type it in. Because it's so easy to have a computer set up in an office, leave it set up, somebody log into it and leave it that way and have it save it, and people just walk up to the computer and click on it and use it, and they didn't pay the same dues you did. So it's actually a good thing. So that was a good question. Any other questions about that one? All right, then. We're going to go quickly. Listings must be entered into Matrix within 3 calendar days, not including the date it was signed. So if it's signed on the 12th, it's got to be in at the 15th by 5 p.m. And there are almost no exceptions to this. And who can tell me what the listing date is of a listing? Then I will tell you. The listing date is the date of the last seller's signature, period. There is no exception to that. And the fine for this is automatic. If you make a mistake, you can apologize. They will feel bad for you, but the fine is $250 and it's automatic. In addition, what you really want to remember is 3, 5, and 7. Listings must be made pending within 5 days of a ratified contract. And again, the date of ratification doesn't count, but it must be made pending once it's been ratified, and that's within 5 days. Listings must be made closed or sold within 7 days of the settlement. And I don't know why you need more days for both of those. And all the other MLSs I've been involved in, they were all the same days, but I guess they want to spare you a lot of computer work. And those are among the rules that people get caught on the most. So any questions about 3, 5, or 7 days? All right then. Then did you know you must upload one photo, a minimum of one photo within 3 days of entering your listing into the MLS. And here's where everybody gets caught. It includes pendings. So for example, one of our new agents yesterday put her first listing into the MLS. It was her own house. I think within 30 seconds, she got an offer on it and sold it. But I've got to remember now to go check. She still has to put a picture in that pending listing. It's required. You have 3 days to put the pending listing in. And let me just mention vacant land, because with vacant land, you often don't have a picture. I mean, it's just a picture of trees. And so how many of you have ever seen a vacant land listing in the MLS and they have that weird, meaningless lots and lands picture in it? Please promise me you will never, ever, ever use that in your vacant land listings. At least take a screenshot of the map or the satellite view. You can get it right out of MLS, or let me know, and put a picture in there that actually means something. Because your listings go out all over the internet, and a picture is worth 1,000 words or more. So promise me on a side note that you will never use that weird universal picture. But you have to put at least one photo within 30 days of entry of it. That would be on coming soon. That would be on active, of course, and that would be on pending. And
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, on the case of the girl, the new agent that just entered the listing, or
Yes.
what if she got the listing, got into the office and was telling somebody, I've got this great new listing, and that agent in our office says, oh wow, I've got a buyer. Now she hadn't entered it in the MLS yet. Tell me the technical of, does it still have to be entered into the MLS as active and then pended, even though she came into the office and that 30 seconds happened? Can you talk that a little bit about?
Well, my answer to that would be, because there are gray areas in all of these rules, but my answer to that is yes, I believe it would still have to be put into the MLS and then immediately made pending and get a photo. We are required to put all of our listings into the MLS unless it is something like an open listing, or unless the seller has declared they don't want it to go into the MLS. But other than that, and there are rules for how you do that, yes, it would have to go into the MLS. Does that make sense? Just nod, Linda.
Yes.
Because I can't
just want
see
to be
everybody
sure.
else.
Thank you. Can you see us? And
I can't see you, Donnie. Your video is off.
No, it's on. It says it's on. And also, I've been using the chat bar. Can you see my chats?
I can see your chats, but for some reason I can't see your video, but that's
weird.
okay. Don't worry about it. I
As
can
long as you
hear
don't
you
care.
just fine. So, all photos, virtual tours must be unbranded. You are not allowed to have a picture of yourself sitting in the living room holding up a sign with your email address on it. You can do a video, but you can't do a walkthrough in the video where you appear in the video, and you certainly can't identify yourself or say your name. All photos and virtual tours and other things like that must be unbranded, because you are not allowed to do anything in the MLS that can be construed as a solicitation of someone else's client or customer. Sure, you would like to say, do not talk to the agent that just gave you this information. Hang up now and call me immediately. But you are not allowed to do that. They belong to the person whose agent and customer relationship they have, and with the coming of buyer agency, that's even more solid. So everything that you put into the MLS must be unbranded. It can only talk about the house. It cannot talk about any people. Same thing with the remarks section. No agent or contact information is allowed in the remarks section. And where agents are getting caught up on this the most right now is probably new construction, because they'll put in there, contact the agent for additional details, because with new construction, there's always lots of details and documents and special contracts. Can't do that. You can tell the agent in the agent remarks that you have stuff and they can contact you, but you cannot say that to the customer. So the remarks section is also only about the house. And no open house information belongs in that remarks section either. There is an open house part of our MLS for each listing, where you can put open houses in, schedule them, put the date and time, say whether it's public or broker, and there's even a comment section there that you can put information in about your open house, but don't use it to solicit other people's customers as well.
So you cannot put in.
Go ahead.
No. So you cannot put in open every weekend. That's wrong. And what about people that say relocating to North Carolina? All
Well,
that is wrong.
Open every weekend, I would put that in the remarks section. I would not put that into the, put that into the agent comments section. I would not put that into the remarks, because now you're telling people's customers, and these listings get sent out to other people's customers, that they can drop by without their agent anytime they want on a weekend. Okay. So no, you can't do that. What was your other part of your question?
Of like an owner is relocating to North Carolina, where you're being specific, you're putting specifics.
That's probably okay, but I wouldn't put that in the remarks section for another reason, and that is people could construe that to mean that the seller is in a hurry, and you might be compromising their negotiating position. So again, I don't think I would put that in the remarks, not so much for this rule, but because it really should just be about the house. It should be about whatever you want people to know the most about the house, and things that are not in any of the other fields about the house. Don't talk about people in it at all. That's your best bet. Tell the agent that they're moving if you want to. And for that matter, you should probably tell your seller you're going to say that. So that's my opinion on that. But the other one, I'm definite about, the open every weekend. Definitely not.
Thank you.
All righty. One other thing that can't go in either the remarks or the agent remarks, and we'll talk a little bit more about lockboxes, but codes cannot go in either one. If you have a regular lockbox and a combo lockbox, which they often do on new construction for contractors and stuff, or if there's an alarm in the house, people will want to put the code for those. You can't put the code either in the remarks, obviously. You don't want to tell the public about them, but you can't put them into the agent comments either, because it becomes a security risk. People still hand out those agent full printouts to people, and you've just given anyone who finds that printout access to that house when nobody's home. So no codes in any of the remarks either. So any questions about that? Well, all right then. I like saying, well, all right. I forget who says that in one of my favorite shows, but somebody does.
Can I ask one quick question though?
Ask as many as you want.
On lockboxes, it always and undeniably must be Centra box.
Going to talk that in a minute. That's the
Okay.
next after the next line item that I have. First, I want to point out that the mapping must be correct and must match realist tax records. It's very easy to forget to make sure your property is mapping when you put a new listing in. And in fact, you are supposed to bring the tax record over into your listing. That's required. All the information in the tax record is required to match the listing information unless it's wrong and you had to change it. So you bring it over and then you make sure it matches. And if it's wrong, you can change it. But you'll notice in some of the fields where you can change it, like square footage, there's another field that you say, did you get this from the tax record? Did you get this from the seller? Did you get this from the appraiser? And you have to tell where it came from. Now, if you have trouble getting your listings to map properly, don't worry about it. Just contact me. I'm very good at it. And I'll jump in there and fix the mapping for you if you're having trouble. But other than that, it has to match. And then we have the answer to Donna's question. If a lockbox is authorized by the seller, it must be a Centra lockbox. Period. For all of the locations that are within CVR MLS's primary jurisdiction, and there are 17 counties. That means technically if you list a house in Danville, no, you probably don't have to put a central lockbox on it. But it doesn't mean it's the only lockbox. You can still have a combo lockbox on it. It's got to be a secondary lockbox. And like I said, they often do that on new construction, for example, so that various contractors can get in. But don't publish that information. And please also do not, and people do this, and it makes agents mad, do not put both lockboxes on there. And then in the central lockbox, put a little note that gives the combination to the other lockbox. That just annoys people to no end. Spend the extra $1.15 and get 2 keys made, please, and put a separate key in each lockbox. You don't want to be negotiating with an agent you've already annoyed. You know what I'm saying? So, along the same lines.
I kind of don't agree with that.
Doesn't matter if you don't agree with it.
I've been reading that they're also complaining about only allowing us 15 minutes to show a property. You know what?
That's up to the agent.
If I have a buyer and they're interested,
yep, then
this agent should be very happy. I read all those emails that are coming across. Nobody's too big that they can't allow.
Well, that's not a rule issue, though. That's up to the agent who's listed it and their seller. They should discuss that with their seller. What's that?
It sounds like it's a rule issue, and
no, it's not.
With these lockboxes.
No, you can make the appointments. In fact, I think the base appointment and showing time is 30 minutes.
No, they said 15 in the email.
That's something the agent had to have set up. I'm pretty sure the base appointment is 30 minutes when you use showing time. Linda's shaking her head yes. So the agent must have set his lockboxes up that way, and that's between them and their sellers.
Okay.
I actually agree with you. 15 minutes isn't enough time, but you know, sellers can and selling agents, listing agents can give bad service if they want to. Linda.
Thank you.
And on showing time, you can actually ask for 45 minutes if you want.
Yes.
If it's something that I think someone is going to be particularly interested in, I'll do that. You know, it gives me a little leeway in case I'm running a little bit behind, you know. So anyway, I don't know if that might be helpful, Donna. I don't know.
Yep. And we're going to talk a little bit more, too, about that in just a minute. But before we get to that, the lockbox serial number must be entered into Matrix within 3 days of getting the listing into the MLS. That's a cross-check for the MLS, and it is not the same as linking or assigning your lockbox to your listing. They're two different things. There's a place in the MLS listing itself where your lockbox serial number goes, and you have to type it in there within 3 days of entering the listing. It doesn't have anything else to do with all the showing stuff. It's the MLS's way of tracking the lockboxes and keeping security. And what I always tell everybody, make sure every time you put a lockbox on a listing, you pull out your phone and take a picture of the lockbox serial number and bring it back with you, because you don't want to drive back there realizing you forgot to write it down anyway, do you? And then you can still assign it and get all the showing information connected to that listing, but they're two separate things, and the one does not take care of the other. And of course, you cannot loan your lockbox access to anyone ever, ever, not ever. There are no exceptions. There are ways that certain people in other related businesses can get access through the showing, the Central Lock. I keep wanting to say the old system, but through the Central Lock system, there's Centra Connect, and it's possible to do all of that. Always use it. We want to record everybody who goes into every house. It's part of the security. So do not ever hand your phone to somebody because a showing has to happen and say, would you cover the showing for me? Just don't do it. Questions about that? I think you all would probably agree with that one. And this is one we've gotten some calls on lately. Your lockbox has to be removed from the property within 48 hours of closing. And there is no end to the times that new buyers, now owners, have called, please get this thing off my front door. And you know what? I think you take it off the day of closing. You ride by and pick it up. When you pick up your sign, don't let your sales manager get an angry call because you forgot to pick up a lockbox. I know you don't pay for them outright anymore. With the old system you did, and RAR after 48 hours could go out and take it and keep it if you didn't take it off in 48 hours. Unfortunately, you don't buy them now, so that doesn't really help very much. 48 hours.
I have a question.
And, yes.
So is it still the rule, or we haven't heard any more about it, the agent, the buyer's agent cannot take the key out of the lockbox to take to closing? The listing agent still has to go out there and get that key and get it to the buyer?
No, they don't have to, but the agent can't take the key out of the lockbox without letting the agent, the listing agent, know they did that. That key is the listing agent's responsibility. It's always been that way. We just got in a bad habit. You, if you're working with the buyer, should never take the key out of the lockbox the day of closing without telling the seller you did that. Because the selling agent, the listing agent, you did that. Because they're the ones responsible for that key.
Well, I'm sure there's
just make a courtesy call or a courtesy text or send an email.
Right, but there was emails a while ago that said the buyer's agent cannot take the key out of the lockbox for closing.
Unless the listing agent tells them it's okay to do.
Okay.
If the listing agent says, sure, go ahead, then you're covered.
Okay.
All right. So, did you know that you must follow the showing instructions? I mean, who'd have thought, you know? They're not just good advice. They're not just a suggestion. Even if the house is vacant and you know it's vacant and there's a lockbox on it, and unless it says just go, you can't pull over to the side of the road and go in that house. That house belongs to somebody. And even if it's a foreclosure, it belongs to the bank, and the bank gets to decide who goes in and out of their house and when. You have to follow the showing instructions. My favorite story is the story of an agent who saw a new listing on the street, called it up on their phone, saw it was vacant with a lockbox, so decided to show it because it had just come on the market. And the 14-year-old girl hiding in her closet upstairs called the police. And you know what? If that happens to you and you call me for bail money, I ain't giving you bail money. You see what I'm saying? You must follow the showing instructions, period. Oh, and by the way, another thought on that key thing, please, after you show the listing, return the key to the lockbox. You're not allowed to keep it, so nobody else can show it until your customer gets a chance to buy it. And agents have done that in the past. So that I know you cannot do. Don't take the key unless the listing agent knows you have it under any circumstances. Any questions about following showing instructions? Yeah, it seems pretty basic, but I can't tell you when I worked up at the board how often I got calls on that. And the other thing I'll mention about showing in appointments is keep your appointment and keep it the way that you're supposed to keep it. And if you're going to be late, call. I get stories all the time of agents showing up to an appointment 2 hours late and trying to show the house because they got slowed up on previous ones. Well, you know what? I understand that happens, but you got to call. Every single time you have to call. And you got to do that. Not only is it the right way to do it, it's professional. And if I ever list my house and you show up 2 hours late, you ain't getting in. It's just not going to happen. So any questions about lockbox and showings? All right, then let's talk about extending or releasing listings. In MLS, that can only be done by the broker or administration or staff or sales manager who have the access. So the good news to you is I have access to all of our listings. If you have a listing that needs to be extended or released and you have the paperwork signed in time, I will take care of the release for you, or in all likelihood, your own agent services coordinator can, or your office sales manager may be able to. But we will take care of that. Two things you need to have, though. You need to have paperwork signed in order to do that. You can't decide to do that unless your seller is signed off on it. And a listing cannot be extended once it passes the expiration date. So please let me know that you need it extended before it expires, because once it expires, it is dead as far as the MLS goes.
Can I add something?
You may.
I also had an incident where an elderly couple doesn't have access to all the fancy stuff. And so, but I was able to get a text from their friend's phone, which they said they wanted to extend it. And Cindy accepted that, but we followed up with written paperwork.
Exactly. I would follow up with written stuff. But if you think about it, at least when I was in the business, I started talking to my sellers about extending the listing, you know, a week or 10 days before it was going to expire, so that I had plenty of time to get the paperwork done. So, but no, that's true. You can do it that way, and that's between you and your sales manager, but follow it up with something signed, because remember, something that is not signed is not worth the paper it is not written on. So make sure you get documentation signed to back that up. Good point, Donna. Thank you for that. Now, we mentioned about the 3 days. If a listing is not going to go into matrix per the seller's instructions, and I should underline seller there, it cannot be your idea. You cannot suggest it. It has to originate with the seller. Then that has to be stated in the listing agreement and initialed by the seller, Otherwise, all your listings go in. Same thing with a delayed showing listing. That must also be stated in the listing and initialed by the seller in the listing agreement. And a date is required in the MLS for when showings must start. So you would not only put in that it's a delayed showing, maybe you're waiting to stage it or something like that, which, by the way, I'm not a huge fan of, because then nobody's going to buy that listing during that time. And in this market, at least, you might have sold it before they spent the money on staging. You know what I'm saying? But in any event, it has to be written in the listing agreement with a date that it can be shown, and that goes in the MLS. And coming soon is somewhat similar to that. There is an addendum. For it to be coming soon in the MLS, you still need a listing agreement. You must use the coming soon addendum, and a listing can be made coming soon for up to 21 days. Now, there has been a change in this in the last few months. You may remember when they first started coming soon, you couldn't market it at all. You weren't even supposed to technically tell people in your own office about it. All that was kind of odd. All you could do is put a coming soon rider on the lawn sign. Well, that has changed because they've realized there's no way to enforce the marketing. So yeah, you can do marketing on it and flyers and such. Here's what you cannot do on either delayed showing or coming soon. It cannot be shown, not by you, not by anyone in your office, not by anyone in another office, not by your broker. Nobody can show it. If you're going to show it, if an opportunity or opportunities are presenting themselves and you don't want to lose them, you need to talk to your seller, tell them we're going to take the delayed showing off, or we're going to take the coming soon off, get it signed and initialed, and make it active. And in addition to that, I highly recommend that you immediately let everybody know that showed any interest at all in the property that it's now active. Go into your reverse prospecting, and anybody who's in there, let them know it just became active. Because you don't want to make it active, rush out there in 45 seconds, or make it active from your phone while you're standing on the front door, right? And then bring your people in, show it and sell it before anyone else can show up. You probably wouldn't get a fine for that, but it's about as unprofessional as it can possibly be, and you haven't represented your seller, because the more people who see the house, the more likely they are to get the highest and best price for the house. That's just a basic principle of real estate. So any question about delayed showing or coming soon and how it works? And then the last thing I'll mention, it has nothing to do with a rule, but I get a lot of questions about it, is that if a listing is sold by someone who's not a member of CVR MLS, the selling code you use is 0009. That's just a little tip because we get that call all the time. In fact, I got it yesterday. So you have a copy of this sheet that I attached to the email I just sent out before this class started. Any questions about any of these, or did you have another MLS rule that you might like my exalted opinion on?
I have a question.
Sure.
Of course. There are agents out there that are not a member of the multiple listing service or NAR, the realtors. How do these rules of the road affect them compared to we have to keep in line?
If they're not a realtor, they can't call themselves a realtor, and they're not subject to the code of ethics or the standards of practice. If they are not members of the MLS, they are not subject to MLS rules, but you are. And as the listing agent, you still get to control their access. Yeah, you have to take extra care in protecting your seller and their property and their rights and the whole transaction if you're dealing with them. Fortunately, there are not very many of those agents out there. And if it is successful in closing, you would still use that 4-digit code for the selling agent when you put it in the MLS.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
All righty. On the other hand, just to argue a defense, because the majority of commercial realtors are not members of the realtor organization, and it's because of the code of ethics and standards of practice, but it's not because they don't want to be ethical. They are very, very ethical. It's just that the rules are primarily created for residential real estate and don't really affect how commercial real estate is practiced. It's just done differently. And they are very ethical. And I found almost all licensed personnel, even if they're not members of the realtor organization, are perfectly ethical for the most part. But it still pays to be a realtor. And a realtor, in my opinion, is still way more professional than a non-realtor. Fair deal? All right, then. I gave you another sheet. We're not going to talk about it in detail, but this sheet explains how the various statuses work. We talked about some of this already, and this is a good tip sheet to keep handy. And I gave it to you in the email that you got earlier. One thing I will point out on here, there are 4 statuses that are active listings. I know that sounds confusing, but here's what I mean by that. Active is an active listing. Active doesn't mean just that it's active on the market. It means that there's a listing agreement in place, and that listing agreement is still in effect. So coming soon is technically not active, I guess. You can't show it, but there's an active listing agreement. So from a legal listing perspective, it's active. Pending is still active. You're not going to show it or anything, but can you take backup offers? Are you still the listing agent? Can it still be marketed? And the answer is yes. And temporarily withdrawn, it's not being marketed through the MLS, but it is technically still active. And so that's why days on market continue to accrue. And you still need a picture and a temporarily withdrawn or a pending. I will say this, though, with temporarily withdrawn, they've taken it off the market to do some work. If somebody comes along and wants to see it and you're going to show it, please, please, please make it active. Don't show it under temporarily withdrawn. And if a listing is temporarily withdrawn or released, you cannot put it back into the MLS as an active listing. You have to reactivate it under the same MLS number, and history continues to accrue.
And isn't it, if it's temporarily withdrawn, you cannot go after that listing. You have to go back through the agent.
Yeah, because it's still active. The listing agreement is still active. Yeah. And you can't release a listing in order to put it back in as a new listing, in order to make it look like a new listing. That's a violation. The only time you can put a listing back in as a new listing is once it's past the expiration date. And the MLS would rather you didn't even do that. They'd rather you extend it, but that's the way listing agreements are written, so they can't make you not do that. Make sense? All righty then. We talked about showing and lockbox rules. And we got a reminder this week from MLS, and Rodney passed this out to all of you. You got it in your email about agents coming early or staying way beyond their appointments and upsetting sellers, and about the 48 hours to get your lockbox off. You should have a copy of this as well, and I would encourage you to just read it and see what the recent problems have been. You should know them not only as an agent who might represent a buyer, but you should know them as an agent representing the seller so that you can protect your seller from these kinds of practices. Tell your seller if anybody shows up and it's not their appointment time, they should not feel pressured, they should not feel coerced, and they should call you if they are. Okay? Advertising. That's one of the other things I wanted to talk about in this. Advertising rules and regulations. They are not terribly complicated. Basically, in all of your advertising, for the most part, you need to have at least 4 things. In the case of electronic communications, 5 things. And in many, many instances, the fair housing logo is required, although not quite in all. So it can get a little bit complicated as far as what applies. You should have a copy of this chart as well. But in all your print advertising, your name, the firm name, and if you use our logo in your print, it's got our name on it, so it covers that. And your contact information, phone, email, website, whatever you use for contact information. And of course, all print advertising must have the fair housing logo. Electronic advertising includes all of the above, but also adds licensee's office, city, and state. In other words, the city and state of the office your license is affiliated with. So I'm out of Mechanicsville, but Linda knows I spend time in all the offices. So if I'm spending a week in Chesterfield like I was last week or so, I am not allowed to change it to Chesterfield. My license is connected to Mechanicsville, and so it must say Mechanicsville, Virginia. And in the same way, Gary there. Gary, which office are you affiliated with again? I've forgotten.
Cary Street.
Yep, so it's always got to say either Carytown or Richmond. Now, the fair housing logo is true of all of these things except email and text. And the only reason for that is many of our email applications can't take an image into it. So, for example, in Instanet, your signature is only text. There's no way to put the fair housing logo in there. So as far as your email is concerned and your texting, the 5 elements above that are required. Name, contact info, firm name, city, state of the license of the office where your license is affiliated, and in addition, your license jurisdiction. That's an NAR requirement. And that would be licensed in the state of, licensed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and for that matter, any other state you are licensed in. Burb, for example, is also licensed in North Carolina. So in all of his electronic advertising and communication, he's got to mention both states. That's an NAR requirement. Now on your website and your social media, you need to have all 5 plus the fair housing logo, and they have to either be on the first page or 1 click away under, for example, a contact me button. And this can be difficult. I will tell you though, if you get a website from outside a hometown, have their people making it for you call me. I'll tell them what they need to do. If you're doing social media marketing, you have a Facebook real estate page, send me the link to your Facebook real estate page. What I will do for you, because this is the easiest way I know to be compliant, is copy off your cover photo, put all this compliance requirements on your cover photo and send it back to you, and then you can change your cover photo. And now your Facebook real estate page is compliant, because you can make it compliant, but you have to put all these pieces in a couple of different places. And it's not that convenient to do. What I'm doing is more convenient than that. And speaking of electronics, I did check. Y'all notice my Zoom background? I have a customized Zoom background. And we are doing more online interaction with our customers. So I asked Peggy up at RAR if it included Zoom background, so that if you are working with customers and clients remotely over Zoom, and she said no, they don't have to match this compliance. It's not considered electronic communications per se, but she did say it was a really good idea. So if you are going to start doing Zoom and you'd like a customized background for your Zoom, let me know, and I will be happy to provide that for you. Lawn signs have to have the firm name on it and have to have the office phone number. The primary office or the branch you work in is fine. They can have agent information and contact information, but they cannot be in place of the first two. So if you look at agents who have their own sign, and some of our agents do, somewhere on there is the hometown logo, because that gives them the name, and the office phone number. It may be smaller than their phone number on there. That's allowed. Sometimes we call that mouse print, but it shouldn't quite be mouse print. But the basic requirement is that they all have to have the firm name and the office phone. You cannot make your own lawn sign up that doesn't also include those. And of course, any other firm requirements that the firm might have. Some firms have their own requirements for their agents who have their own lawn signs. Any questions about that?
Yes. So some companies don't have, so which overrides the other? Is this an NAR law? Is this a state law? Or where did the laws come from? Or where does this group of must-haves come from? Because some companies do not have the office phone number. They have the agent phone number direct.
They're required to have both. Now, not everybody polices it. If I'm not mistaken, I'm 95% sure this is a DPOR requirement, but there's nobody riding around watching it. But sad to say for you here at Hometown, I do watch this stuff. So if you're not in compliant and I spot it, you will hear something from me. I want our agents to be in compliant, and it doesn't have to be huge. What you're not allowed to do in this business, if you have your own business name and your own team, you are not allowed to make it look like you are your own broker, because you're not. You are still under the umbrella of Hometown Realty and Mike Chenault, and he's the one who's responsible for you and all your agents and all your listings and all your transactions before the law. And so that's why this rule is in here. But it can be small. It doesn't have to be dominant, but it has to be there.
I've also seen where the office phone number is only on one side of the sign, and it's a two-sided sign, and the agent phone number is on the other side of the sign. Is that considered legal then?
I don't know. I mean, people will come up with all kinds of bizarre ways of getting around this stuff because we're all such entrepreneurs, and we get as close to the line as we can without getting in trouble, and then sometimes we slip over and get in trouble. So I can't honestly say whether I know that fulfills it or not, but it certainly doesn't fulfill the spirit of it. And I wouldn't like it. I don't think it's professional, but that's my opinion.
So you said if we're licensed in another state, we have to have that on what?
On your signatures, on your electronic communications, on your signatures, on your websites, because websites get viewed all over the country, and on your social media, because they get viewed all over the country. So your electronic communications have to have all the states you're licensed in.
Is it only actively licensed and not in referral, or what? Okay.
Actively, yes, not referral. Okay. All right, but don't forget, that'll vary from state to state because Virginia doesn't have a referral license. And of course, if you're in referral, you're not supposed to be out there marketing real estate anyway, so it becomes a non-question at that point. Disclosure information. You are required to disclose that you have interest in a property that's being sold in all of your media, whether or not it's listed with a real estate firm. So, for example, Hamlet decides to list his own house and he doesn't want to list it as a real estate agent, too bad. You have to disclose to everybody that you are marketing your house to that you are a real estate agent. You, from now on, basically tell everybody you know that you are a real estate agent, and you're doing that anyway. It looks like we lost Linda. I hope she comes back. And then firm and office requirements. These are only if you open your own office, so we don't have to go over those, but those are the requirements office-wide for advertising. Any other advertising questions? We are getting pretty close to being done. Those are the main ones I wanted to cover. Couple of more quick things. And Donna, I am so glad that you were here because you are one of the people who have done this with me more than once. Did you know that if you are the selling agent, they now call it the buyer's agent, the agent representing and working with the buyer, and it sells, you can promote the fact that you sold that listing?
I am thankful.
Yes, and Donna, you do that. But there has to be three things. Number one, you wait until the transaction is closed. While it's pending, you cannot put out a under contract postcard or a sold postcard. The listing agent can, you cannot. And once it's closed, you have to take your own photo of the home. You can't use the one in the MLS because that's owned by the listing agent. It's under copyright through the MLS. So you got to go take your own picture, and you have to ask your customer if it's okay for you to promote it, because you are not allowed to promote somebody else's houses without their permission. When you list a house, the listing agreement gives you that permission. Once it's closed, you need to ask your buyer, do you mind if I send a postcard out to the neighborhood that I just sold this property? And 99% of the time, I'm sure they won't mind. But why should the listing agent have all the fun? You did as much work as they did. So why not take advantage of this opportunity to promote yourself to the neighborhood? I just found you a new neighbor.
I'm just
And
glad that
promote
they
yourself.
changed that. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. I'm just glad that they changed that. That I never did understand their ruling on that.
I think it's not so much that they changed it. Well, yeah, I guess it was maybe 10 years ago that they actually changed it. But it's been this way for a long time. It's just that a lot of agents don't realize they can do it. But I think it's a good thing to do, and I figure, why not?
Yeah.
Let's talk about EMD guidelines. And I sent you one of these. There's lots of information in here. I'm not going to go over it in detail. I'm just going to tell you two things and then beg you to not do something. Number one, an EMD, a deposit, an escrow check, whatever you want to call it, has to be in our escrow account, not just into the office, in our escrow account by the end of the 5th business banking day after ratification. Period. There are no exceptions except that you wrote some things into the contract, and I'm not going to go over those because I don't know if I interpret them properly or not. I don't teach the contract. But there's a place in the contract where you can extend that if everyone agrees to it. But it still has to be within the 5 business banking days in our account on time. And there are no exceptions. And DPOR takes this very, very seriously. Elizabeth, are you there?
I am.
Oh, good. I'm going to use you as an example because I know you would never do this. If you forget to bring the EMD into the office for a week, technically, we are supposed to immediately report you to DPOR. No excuse. With an explanation of why you did it, how we punished you, and what remedial steps we are taking to fix your training. That's how serious DPOR takes this.
Yikes.
Which is why we require you to get the check to your ASC. This says 2 days within ratification. I've heard some sales managers will say 3, but we want to get it in time to be able to match it up to the contract paperwork, process it, and get it into our escrow account within the time frame. So don't treat these lightly. They should not sit in the back seat of your car. This is not just a rule, it's a law, and it's one of the most important. And on behalf of our sales managers and our ASCs, do not ever bring one of these into the office and put it on the ASC's desk and leave without a note saying what property it's for, what the buyer and seller's names are, and who it is that dropped it off, namely you. And if you're telling your buyer they can drop it off at any one of our offices, that's great, but please make sure that they give those same 3 pieces of information when they drop it off. It is a nightmare sometimes when the paperwork hasn't yet gotten into the office and we get these checks and they have to go in. It is a nightmare to track down who they belong to. So that's the most important parts of the earnest money deposit. That's what EMD stands for. Rules and laws and regulations, and if you love your ASC, principles. Any questions about that?
Question. So
Yes.
a lot of times a buyer will put $1,000 down.
Yes.
If the contract gets ratified, but the seller writes in within 5 days or 10 days or after home inspection, an additional 5,000 or 10,000 will be put down as EMD.
Mhm.
How does that play into the 5-day rule here? Because that is happening.
It's not part of the 5-day rule, but you better make sure you keep that time frame because the restrictions and the penalties would be exactly the same.
So it is not part of this initial 5-day?
No, that's due on the date that everyone agreed to.
So
But
this
it's
is
due
just
on
for
the date
initial
that everyone agreed to.
Okay.
Okay, you can't get slippery with it. It's still deposit money. It's still someone else's money.
Okay.
All right. All righty. What else did I want to show you? Well, I have some sign ordinances here. Not all communities have sign ordinances, but many of them do. And I did send this to you. This was last updated back in 2019, and I don't believe there's been a new one, and I don't think anything has changed. But you do want to follow these as well. My favorite thing is when an agent calls that somebody took all their signs, who would do such a dastardly thing, and it turned out to be the community because they were in violation. You will not get any sympathy from me about that. I'm very sorry. So I sent you one of these, and find your county on here and make sure that you follow these. Look at the size of some of these fines. $1,000 is more than enough to convince me. So that's an important thing that we run into sometimes.
So if the county is not on here, then that means there aren't any ordinances?
Or at least as far as we know. But you
Okay.
tell you what, if they put in ordinances in the last year and we didn't hear about it and you violate them, they're not going to cut you a break. So
Okay.
keep your eye out. You know, it's one of those things you're required to know even if you didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? So here's a look at some of the most popular fines to commit in our business. They must be popular because everybody keeps doing it. And why would they do something they don't like this often, right? So this is an important thing. Total fines issued in the first quarter were 120. Now think of all of the iCheck notices that everybody gets, and there are a lot of them. I get copied on all of them, and I get them every day. There are a ton of them, but they've only issued 120 fines in the first quarter out of 5,000 agents. So anybody who thinks that they collect these fines as a source of income has no idea what they're talking about. They do not. They would rather not fine people but they need to find people in order to keep people doing what they're supposed to do. The most popular one is not making it sold within 7 days. You would think 7 days would be enough time. But a lot of agents have the bad habit of once it closes and their check arrives, they don't care anymore. Well, to the tune of $250, you will care, because things like not making it sold, not getting it in with 3 days, not pending it in time are automatic fines. There is no reason that you can have that will be acceptable. If it's sold and you weren't informed that it's sold, that only happens with foreclosures. That can be sometimes an exception. If you didn't know the listing had been signed because you sent it out by pen and ink and it took a week to get back in the mail, you still put the listing date in there that they signed it. And if it's past the 3 days, you explain that in the notice and they won't fine you. But other than things like that, those fines are automatic. And as you can see, they're the most popular ones. The most notifications that are sent out is for not putting the serial number of the lockbox in the listing or not putting it in correctly. And just take the picture when you put the lockbox on the house.
Does that mean serial,
be fine.
the serial number in use, does that mean that when it was taken off of another house, it didn't get deleted? And so when you put it on the new house, is that what it means by serial number in use?
Yeah, because it can't show up in 2 listings.
Okay.
And
Wow,
they have a way of tracking that. So, and you can see how many notices go out. Think about this, 9,500 notices, only 120 fines. So no, they're not out to get your money. And you can see similar numbers in second quarter, and for the most part, the same offenses. And I just thought you would find that interesting. Last thing I'm going to mention is this class, Road Rules. This is a class that Peggy Lynch teaches. You should take this class every year, no matter what. I try to take it more than once a year, not just to understand the rules. But Donna, you saw how many questions you had. And there are so many more, and they control how we interact with each other and how we interact with our customers and clients. And not only will you learn about the rules, especially the ones that are the most important, but you will gain tremendous insight in how the business works, how to handle your clients, how to handle your cooperative arrangements in your listings and sales. And I think it's possibly the most practical course that they teach down there at RER. And as you can see, it's now available online. And if that's not enough reason to take it, every time you take the class, it used to only be once a year, but now they've said every time you take it, if you've used it up already, you get a get out of jail free card.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Seriously, you can take it more than once?
Yeah, you can now. Now, you can only have 1 card at a time. So if you took it and you didn't get in trouble and you didn't use your card within a year of that class, you can't take another one and get a second card at the same time.
Oh, but can you
But if you take the class now and you get the card, and in 3 months you use the card, and you take the class again in 4 months, you get another card. You used to have to wait a whole year before you could take it again.
That is excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
There is one other thing you need to know, though. You have to take the class before you commit the crime. Okay? You can't commit the crime and then go take the class to cover it. It doesn't work that way either. Okay? But I highly recommend this class. I would put it on your calendar every year. You will never regret taking the class. Peggy does a phenomenal job on it, and I'm going to take it again myself soon. So that's our class. Not too bad. We went 1 hour and 10 minutes. Not bad. And any last quick questions?
So this is an
Got it.
online class that you can take at any time, or is it like scheduled like September 8th or September 20th?
Well, whenever they offer it. The online class,
So on demand
Yeah.
doesn't mean just I can go online and take that class myself.
yeah, they're offering it on September the 1st, apparently. Or
Well, that's already passed.
September the 1st. You know, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how this works online with that, whether it's pre-recorded or live or not. So you'll want to check on that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a great class. And I like it even better in person because I love to hear everybody's questions.
Yeah.
People ask some amazingly interesting questions.
That was really polite.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you go. I hope this was useful.
John, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. It's Beth Pastore. I had sent you an email a while back about the Facebook situation.
Yes.
If you post some type of, I'm going to just use postcard as an example. If I put a postcard on my business Facebook page.
Yeah, you would turn it into a
and you-
JPEG and post it. It has to be compliant. Yes.
So does that actual post have to have all those things on it, or because it's on my Facebook page that has that stuff already at the top, it's compliant?
It does not have to be compliant in and of itself on your Facebook page as long as your Facebook page is compliant, which is why I like to put it on your
Okay.
cover page because that always shows no matter where people are on your site. But I'm also a belt and suspenders guy. So when I make things for people to post, I make them compliant as well because you can use that for something other than posting. If I make you a JPEG, you can send it out as an email or you can print it.
Right.
And so just because it's a JPEG doesn't mean you're only going to use it on your Facebook page. So I make everything compliant just to be on the safe side.
But if I just want to like send out like some financial figures, like maybe what
Yeah.
the market's doing,
Mhm.
or just like a quick little blurb, like you know, we went to the farmer's market today.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, okay, I don't have to put it on that.
No, you don't, as long as your page itself
Perfect.
is compliant.
And
Good
then
question.
if I take that as as my personal page, so if then just my regular page that's not my business page, if
Mhm.
I share the business page with my friends, and it's connected to that business page, then I'm still compliant, correct?
You're still compliant, but the one area
Okay.
that's gray that I would caution you about is posting real estate related things on your personal page, which I think everybody does because when it comes down to it, the people you want to talk to are not on your real estate page, they're on your personal page.
Right.
So I would make
Right,
sure
right.
everything you put on your personal page is compliant in and of itself.
Okay, I don't ever put anything on my personal page
Yeah,
unless I'm sharing it from my business page, so they
that's
can
a good
always
way to do
refer
it.
back.
That's a
Okay,
real good
I
way
just
to,
wanna-
that's actually probably the best way to do it, yes.
Okay,
Are you in
I
the
just wanted
office
to make
now?
sure.
Yeah. Are you in the offices now?
I am at home.
At home? How can I get with you then and make sure that, because I'm now fully licensed in Florida too, and I didn't know you had to have that on all your
I'm going to stop
emails.
my recording, so thank you all for being here, and if you're watching this recording, thank you for watching it.